Good afternoon, everybody. I invite my colleague speakers to come on stage. I will facilitate from here in solidarity with you, Amanda. So please join us. The idea of this second panel is to now to go global and to think about really this network, all the potential of this network you have identified through the first speech. But now we have to see how to become a really global network, making connection with all your partners you have around the world. All the universities now are connected. All the universities have maybe some colleagues, some peer university, but also some corporate, as we mentioned before, that are part of their network. So we have to use this network to make visibility to a real global issue for everybody. So this second panel has the pleasure to welcome Karine and Tomasello. Karine represents a school, special school in France that is working on business, but she's also part of a network that we call Grandes Écoles, conference of high, but not high school the way you listen in English, but conference of university and higher education, I would say, which is a network already of 200 institutions trying to work all together at global level. So please, Karine, explain us how you facing visibility inclusion within this network, and maybe you can also immediately after that continue to discuss about the global issues and how you manage to become a huge network with 200 people and bring this visibility inclusion as a matter of concern for everyone.
Hello everyone. So just to clarify, we're more than 200. We're actually 229 higher education schools and research centers. I myself am a health and disability counselor at ISEG School of Management. So as a business school, I'm also a part of the Conférence des Grandes Écoles. The Conférence des Grandes Écoles has actually several working groups, and I'm part of the disability working group. We're currently about 40 disability counsellors, we're 40 members. That's one of our many activities. And we were born only in 2005, thanks to the law on disability. I don't know if you know, but in France, we had to wait until 2005 to have a law on disability and inclusive education. So what are the challenges that we face mainly right now in our school? The biggest disability, the most represented disability is dyslexia. That's the first one. And just a telling number, only 1% of disabled students manage to get to our schools, engineering schools, business schools, of all the disabled students, the French disabled students. That's not a lot, so that says a lot about how we try to be inclusive, but obviously that's not enough. So what has been working for us so far, what we've been working on at the CGE, we meet regularly and we've been working on several things, the main thing being we want to create an international, I can't remember the official translation in English, the International Disabled Student Status. We've been trying to get it voted. We've worked a lot on it for a lot of years, and it's a work in progress right now. What we've managed to do so far is also create a charter of disabled students that all the school members of the CGE have to sign. We first created it in 2008, and we've just signed the second version with the Secretary of State for the Disabled People. This charter gives guidelines on what to do when you have disabled students, etc. One of the main challenges we have, obviously, is international mobility. That's still a problem on so many levels. First of all, because it's very costly for our students, and even for students who want to come to our school in France. Think about medication, think about traveling by plane. Most of the time it's very expensive. And once you're in the country where you want to study, you have to pay extra costs for adapted transport systems. So, and not to mention the awful lot of paperwork that you have to do. So one of our main concern is to try and get this status, to be voted, to be created, to be official through all around the world, basically. That's one of the main issues. What has been working for us so far is raising awareness of disability among our professors. All of us disability counsellors regularly organise sessions to raise awareness about disability throughout the faculty, basically. Also the administrative staff, we think it's really important, and also amongst the students, because not all of them know what it's like to be disabled, especially since, as you may not know, in France, 80% of disabilities are actually invisible. I myself am disabled and you cannot see it. So that's been working a lot. We've developed lots of tools as well, tools to help schools and tools to help disability officers and counsellors. And we've been working a lot on the transition between secondary school, higher education schools, and the employment aspects of life, the professional integration. That's we've partnered a lot with associations. We've partnered with the FEDE, which is an association of disabled students that helps promote study and employment of students with disability. We've worked with companies a lot. As you well know, there are more and more disability counsellors in big companies and big groups. So we've been trying to work a lot with them. We've attended more and more student fairs to be visible so that the students know that our schools welcome disabled students. And what's the most important thing is that each time that we meet a disabled student, we need to take into consideration their own personal situations. We cannot grant general accommodations to everyone. Each individual must be taken into consideration.
Thank you very much, Karine. I think it's an experience of an existing network already. I don't know if you mentioned it, it's a network of francophone university. So it's all the world of French-speaking university and higher education institution gathered together in this network. Now I would like to give the floor to Derrick. Derrick, you are with us on the screen now for a few minutes. We can see you. You are the executive director of the American University Institute on Disability and Public Policy. You're based in Washington, D.C., but you're also very involved on the governance and internet governance and academic network. And so you can also speak a lot on this issue of access to internet. So please, Derrick, explain us how you participate to this disability inclusion in universities, and also how you manage to work at a global level. So normally you will be online very soon. Can you try to speak, Derrick? It's mute somewhere. Unmute, Derrick. En bas à gauche. See that your mic is mute. It's not from us. Is it on your side? No. We have a sign that it is mute.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, no, it was not on my side. Hello, everybody. Yes, Hervé, do you want me to address both questions or just the first question?
Yes, please do both, because we are running out of time and I really want to...
Sure. Sure. It's My pleasure. So I want to thank everybody for allowing me to participate remotely. I really hated not being there with you in person. That was my original plan, and I got squeezed between 2 other meetings, and so I couldn't make it in person. But my regards to Hervé and Erica and Ruby and Senator Harkin, and I think I see Charlotte there against the wall. So hello there, Charlotte. So I'm delighted to say a little bit about the work that we've done in global accessible education with a particular focus on Southeast Asia. So in 2009, we founded the Institute on Disability and Public Policy, particularly to focus on the CRPD. So the CRPD that was signed in 2006 had a mandate of nothing about us without us. And the idea was that persons with disabilities should have a seat at the table whenever public policy was developed around persons with disabilities. And the Nippon Foundation in Japan had the idea of making sure that the training for persons with disabilities and public policy in particular would enable them to sit at that table. So as Senator Harkin was saying, he has started to focus on employment. We had a very narrow sort of employment stream. We wanted to focus on getting people with disabilities able to understand public policy issues in a way that would enable them to be effective at monitoring and developing the implementation of public policy related to persons with disabilities. So that was our overall goal. And so we built the IDPP as a network of universities in Southeast Asia. The focus was on a master's degree in disability and public policy, but also on continuing education, certificate programs, and capacity building. We also focused on outreach and awareness raising and collaborative research. So we served as a think tank on disability policy for Southeast Asia. So this was an innovative approach. So this was American University's first fully online master's degree. Thanks to the funding from the Nippon Foundation, we had up to 15 fellowships per year for students who were blind and visually impaired, deaf and hard of hearing, and mobility impaired, all from Southeast Asia. And we were able to build and get this approved by our Board of Trustees as American University's first fully online master's degree. We used our accessible technology to enable faculty members from American University, but also from around the world, to be able to participate in this master's program. We also had as part of the master's program, we had a face-to-face residency once a year. And so while we had a very robust learning environment, distributed cyber learning environment, we also had a face-to-face residency, which brought together what we called our IDPP family. So we were able to bring together our faculty members with our students, with our staff, but also all of our university partners throughout Southeast Asia. And I know that Charlotte participated on a number of occasions. People like Victor Pineda participated, and many other global disability leaders were able to participate both remotely and in person. So people like Ambassador Luis Gallegos was able to participate as well. Now the network was founded in 2011. So we built a network of 20 universities in Southeast Asia. American University and the National Technical Institute for the Deaf were the 2 founding institutions from the United States. But we also had the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in Singapore, Mahidol University in Thailand, and we had the International Council for the Education of People with Visual Impairment and the Asia Pacific Development Center on Disability. So we had 4 universities and 2 outreach partners when we launched this initiative in 2011. And when we turned over this network to our partners in Southeast Asia in 2017, we had built the network to 20 universities in Southeast Asia. So we had a university partner in every country in Southeast Asia except for Laos. And I see that we have a colleague joining us virtually today from Laos. So I wish you could have joined our network. So we had 20 universities throughout Southeast Asia as partners. and then also outreach partners. So we also partner with Simeo Sin, the Southeast Asia network on special education, and that was also critical to our success. As we started to plan for institutionalization of the network and turning it over to our partners in Southeast Asia, we started to move from the master's program that we developed at American University to look at the master's programs of our partner institutions. And so we looked at 4 of our partner institutions, the University of Malaya, Mahidol University, University of Gadjah Mada in Indonesia, and Ateneo de Manila in Manila. We looked at their master's programs and looked at how our existing master's program would link with their master's programs. And so we started to support sending our IDPP fellows to those institutions instead of to our virtual master's program at that point, but we also enabled them to be virtual as well. And so in closing, in 2017, we turned over the network to the ASEAN University Network. We worked with AUN to create the AUN Disability and Public Policy Network. It's called AUN DPP Network. And that allowed IDPP to become IDPP Global and to start to focus on the rest of the world. So I'm looking forward to sharing with our colleagues on how this has worked, some of the lessons that we learned in building this global network focused on Southeast Asia, and to really highlight the role that universities have been able to play in this process and can play in the future. So thank you, Hervé.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting to see again another network starting slowly with 4 or 5 members and growing a lot now with more than 20 members. And this is focus on Southeast Asia, but also focus on become global slowly to other places. So we talk about the Francophone countries, we talk about Southeast Asia. Let's go now to another continent, China. I have the pleasure to welcome Kathryn, Jonhson, and Knopf, who will speak as a jurist. And you are both from St. Cloud State University in Minnesota. And of course, you represent your university, but you represent also your education and all the involvement, investment of your university in China through the Confucius Institute. So you can explain a little bit what is Confucius Institute and explain the connection with China and how this support the development of inclusive access to higher education. So Kathryn, maybe the floor is yours.
Okay, greetings. I am Kathryn Jonhson from St. Cloud State University in Minnesota, and I'm not Chinese. I'm Irish American. You'll find that out. My colleague, Amy Knopf. But I've been working in the area of disability advocacy in China for more than 20 years now. Currently serving as in the role of the director of our Confucius Institute. And so I'm here as a bridge to China and to give you a synopsis of what is happening within China in the context of higher education and inclusive higher education, and then some avenues that we're doing through our partners, and we'll highlight all of our partners. But I wanted to brief you, when we talk about China, we're talking about 1/5 of the world's population. And in this room, I don't think we have anyone from China. We tried to get them here, but it's hard to get a visa. So we have many online participants from our partner universities in China. We welcome you, for those who are listening. We're thankful to see the Harkin Institute invited CDPF, China Disabled Persons Federation organization members tomorrow to participate. And then I'm also thankful that from the University of Vienna, Confucius Institute, the director is here also. And so when we look at the statistics, we have, just to summarize briefly, the significance of all of us establishing partnerships with China. It's estimated that we have about 85 million people with disabilities. 25 million have a physical disability. 21 million are deaf. 12 million are blind. 6 million are cognitively delayed and challenged. And 25 million have a severe to profound disability. It's a lot of people. And so I love my job, and I'm very thankful to be here to share with you why in the world would a Confucius Institute get involved in disability advocacy? I'll tell you why. In the network of Confucius Institutes, there are more than 500, in over 140 countries. And so I am working with my partners who are sitting here to maximize this network to be serving as a change agency for advancing disability rights in China. To give you some foundational knowledge, China has signed and ratified the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. They have established and authored the new 13th National Disability Plan from 2016 to 2020. So on paper, there are a lot of ambitious goals that China has taken, and they have the passion and the commitment to move this work forward. But what we all can provide are avenues for bridging that knowledge gap that exists on paper policies to actually implementing program development. So my colleague will talk a little bit about her work.
Hello, my name is Amy Abier-Knopf. I'm a Harkin Fellow in the area of disability, and I'm also a professor at St. Cloud State University. And I've been focusing my research looking at education and employment opportunities for people who are deaf in China. And I've been working with a colleague from Chongqing Normal University, Dr. Jonhson. And some of the work that we've been doing with our partners in China has really been focusing on how do we build infrastructure. And so some of the areas that we have been looking at is access to quality interpreters. And so if there's not academic programs, and there are a few, we have a great partner at Zhengzhou University that has an interpreter training program, but there are very, very limited academic programs to train individuals to become interpreters. So it's hard to support people in higher education when there's not access for individuals who are deaf. And also, the other thing that we've been looking at is barrier-free environments. And in China, there's still, I believe a young gentleman from the other panel mentioned this, in China, there's still limitations about what universities you can attend and what majors you can go into if you're a person with a disability. And we have been working with some partners to try to broaden that scope. One of them is Chongqing University, and they have some excellent opportunities for the partners that we're working with in bridging that gap.
Mm-hmm. And also, when we talk about the access and barrier-free environments, we're looking at partnerships to develop the model programs in China. Seeing is believing. And not everyone from China can come to our universities to see what that looks like. So we're hoping to partner with some of our new avenue or new organizations to have a vision for creating a fully accessible, universally designed university in China with the partner at Jonhson University.
Yeah, and we, some of the innovative strategies that we've been working with Chongqing in particular is trying to figure out how can we provide opportunities for individuals in people-to-people exchange. And so some of the barriers that we've been having is that there's a limited number of people with disabilities, particularly those who are deaf, who have access to higher education. And once they have access to higher education, those majors are very limited, and they're mostly limited in the areas of arts. And we have been working on a new project in trying to bridge schools for the deaf from China and the United States. Dr. Jonhson had a colleague come to the United States a couple years ago and provide instruction in Chinese Sign Language to deaf students at one of the schools for the deaf in St. Paul. And having that opportunity for foreign language instruction in sign language is a novel idea. It's not something that's been done anywhere else. But to find people who are deaf who have the academic credential to be able to do the teaching has been limited. And so one of the projects we're working with Chongqing is they're actually developing a graduate certificate program so we can have deaf individuals come into this program and learn leadership skills. And then part of that would be that they would have a 1 year abroad in not only the United States, but other countries in providing Chinese Sign Language and Chinese culture instruction through the Confucius Institute Network.
We're working right now on that model being a US-China network, but within another couple of years, we hope to have that be a global network. So from whatever country you're residing in, we hope you will reach out to your Confucius Institute and be an advocate for including and engaging people with disabilities. In China, when we talk about, so what are some other realities that we're dealing with? In China, because of the size and the immense population, we have a lot of difference between urban and rural development. And so along the coast, we have Shanghai and Beijing, some of the bigger names that you'll be familiar with. There is more advanced opportunities, but when we go into Western China, there's a huge disparity between opportunity and equity. And then when we talk about inclusive higher education, I think we all know, but the reality stands out even more prominently within China. So we have to look back to our early childhood programs and to our K-12 programs, that to all of a sudden just have inclusive higher education is very challenging unless we start when they are very young in early childhood in our K-12 programs.
So there is a plan, the government has a plan for inclusive education at the K through 12 level that aims at having 95% of children with disabilities enrolled in mainstream schools by 2020. Again, there needs to be more work with partners in helping build infrastructure so that the supports and accommodations are there if 95% of children with disabilities are actually enrolled.
So when we look at bridging the knowledge gap between faculty who are leading research within China in collaborative manners, that a high need exists to shift from theory to actual practice, and what are best practices that are happening around the world that could come to China. And another area that we need to think about, and Amanda had addressed this, and her president of Derrick University, of really needing to think about the social cultural values towards people with disabilities. First, we have to value their human potential and value the contributions that they can make within our societies, and the economic investment and the value added contributions again, and then the policies of shifting from paper to actual practice. So today we want to highlight how does this network look like? This is something that Dr. Knopf and I have been working a lot on this last year, is building this network on a global scale. So Dr. Knopf will share about her experience.
Yeah, so some of the things that we've been working on is building the standards for interpreter education. And so we're working with a couple institutions, and we're also working with BNU. They have a research center that has been trying to standardize Chinese Sign Language. So there's a lot of complicating factors in just setting up an academic program. But that's one of the goals that we have, is to have more formal interpreter training programs to meet both the education and employment needs of people who are deaf. Also, development of academic training programs in the area of vocational rehabilitation to enhance employment supports. And so in China, they don't have academic programs in vocational rehabilitations. There is a few community programs that provide some employment support, but it's very few. My field of study in my master's program at St. Cloud State is in vocational rehabilitation. So I'm working with a couple of universities to maybe do some partners of 1+1 programs for individuals in China to develop those skills that they need to be able to provide that kind of employment support.
And so through working with the Harkin Institute, thank you, Joseph Jones, the executive director is here. Thank you, Senator Tom Harkin, for your support with our work. We developed a strong partnership with the Harkin Institute, which then provided the Harkin Fellowship for Dr. Amy Knopf to do her research, which then got us connected to the Zero Project with Martin Essel, who is here, the founder of that, which then also got us connected with more of our international partners who are at this table, inclusive of the University of Vienna. So through our Global Confucius Institute network, we're really working on that global scale of encouraging other institutions who host a Confucius Institute to think about how they can include and engage people with disabilities, both in the teaching and learning of Chinese, to develop global competencies for people with disabilities. When we talk about employment strategies, increasing global competencies for our students with disabilities. The power of people-to-people exchange, that when we bring students to China in a wheelchair, when we bring students or faculty or administrators who are deaf, we're modeling that, yes, you can, and overcoming that, oh, that's impossible type of attitude that we've been confronted with. The other area that both of us and Joseph Jones very much have a core value in is inclusive scientific diplomacy. When we do the collaborative research, it is not myself as a hearing individual. It is not Dr. Knopf as a hearing individual. We invite and always work to have someone with a disability as the lead member of our team. And that's a core value that we work very hard to also promote with our other colleagues who aspire to do research in China. And so for the area of bridging that knowledge gap, it takes teams of people with disabilities and people without disabilities to lead the way. So in that sense, then if you have another question.
Welcome. Thank you. So before going to another set of questions, I want to see if there's any reaction in the room or any other network you would like to share with us. We talk about the Francophone network, we talk about the Chinese network, we talk about the Southeast Asia network. So there's other network existing, and we are very glad that we can welcome other networks in the GUDIN network. But yes, maybe you can.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Topper from Vienna University Confucius Institute, and I'm very honored to be here. And it was through Kathryn that I was introduced to my Viennese, Mr. Essel. And so since last year, our Confucius Institute in Vienna is joining the network. And in 2 weeks, I will be in Jonhson University, not only planting a tree, but also giving a lecture. And so we are very enthusiastic in contributing. I myself had studied in Beijing 1974-5, so 44 years I'm going to China now, up to once a month. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we mentioned also the Zero project as one of another network. Every year they have a different topic. This year it was political participation. Next year it will be inclusive education. Martin?
Yes, hello to everybody. I'm Martin Essel from the Essel Foundation Zero project. Next year, thank you so much for informing the audience here. We will have our conference in February, and our main topic will be education, and I will highly invite you at first to be part of the nomination call. The call for nomination will take place in the start of May and will remain till start of July. And we expect about 700 to 1,000 innovations from more than 100 countries. And our expert groups contains of almost 5,000 experts from 180 countries. Please be part of showing us all the innovations you have seen in your network, so that we will have a great opportunity in having the conference in the UN headquarters in Vienna. And I would love also to invite you to come and join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We wanted also to share some network experiences.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Bertrand Joubert. I'm the coordinator of a French national network, but I speak also of some European thing about inclusion of people with autism in university. We gather some 20 universities in France, and we are beginning a work in an Erasmus Plus network with 4 other countries, which are UK, Finland, Germany, and Netherlands, in order to design some tools for improving the employability of people with autism, with other people with autism. And also I wanted to mention another network, which is the American network, about which is called College Autism Network. And what I wanted next to say is that one of the points that occurred in several interventions, and I think it's really important, is about the mobility of students and how to do that. And actually, I'm also the president of Campus France, which is the French agency for promotion of French higher education. And probably this is something we should work in the different agencies in the world through the mobility of students, how to integrate inclusion of people with disabilities in those aspects.
Thank you very much. Indeed.
Yeah, Andy and Parado with AUCD, the Association of University Centers on Disabilities. We're based in Washington, D.C. area. But I wanted to just mention another network called Think College, which is based in the United States. And they're supporting inclusion of students with intellectual disabilities in higher ed, which is a movement in the United States and in some other countries. They typically get a certificate and there's a strong employment emphasis, but it's a growing movement in the United States, and a lot of my centers are involved in supporting those centers in their states. I also just wanted to ask a question of Karine, if I can. Senator Harkin in his opening talked about the importance of business schools, and my understanding from talking to you over lunch is that business schools are part of your network. So I'm just wondering if you see an opportunity to get more leadership coming from faculty at business schools in helping the students think about the opportunities associated with hiring people with disabilities and the disability community as a market.
I'd like to address that as well when she's finished.
Important. Right now, where I am, I'm going to speak just for my school, not for the CG, the Conférences des Grandes Écoles. Currently, I'm working on it. I'm trying to build, for now, an unofficial network of disability counselors from different groups and different companies, and then trying to get them to know me, to know that we exist, and that our school has a lot of disabled students that we would like to see accessing, I don't know, white collar professions, that we have a lot of them, and that they're good to hire. They have to do 3 compulsory internships. And so basically now it's starting to work in that lots of these disability counselors send me their job offers, and then I can relay them to my students, even though, please know that in France, you cannot restrict a job offer to anyone, including disabled students. But just to reassure my students in that being disabled is not taboo anymore. It doesn't mean that you won't get hired. It doesn't mean that you will get hired either. It just means that now groups are more open to that. But I think that definitely we need to build an official network of these companies potentially recruiting our students.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I
To Erica to see if we have questions or comments from the.
If I could respond to that last question.
Dr. Cogburn wants to.
Please, Derrick, can you please
Yes. Yes. So thank you for the question about business schools. I also have a joint appointment in our Kogod School of Business. I'm a professor in 2 schools, the School of International Service and the Kogod School of Business. And one of the things that we have at our business school is our strategy is business as a social good. And we really look at the ways in which business can contribute to social and economic development and inclusion. And it's one of the things I like so much about our business school. So when I heard Senator Harkin talking about that, the role of business schools this morning, or for my morning, I wanted to highlight that aspect as well. We also have within the business school, we have a committee on diversity and inclusion, and it promotes, as many people have said, faculty members who are interested in inclusion for persons with disabilities as well. There's also a cash kind of prize or bonus that's available to faculty members that do exceptional work in the space around diversity and inclusion. And so I think that there are strategies for aligning business schools and training for MBAs and analytics professionals around this area. One other example is, I think Senator Harkin knows, we have a partnership at American University with Special Olympics. And one of the things we're doing with Special Olympics is analyzing their health data. So my Master of Science in Analytics students are analyzing data from Special Olympics and doing predictive modeling and very interesting visualizations of this data. And so it's a way of this partnership between a business school and the disability community.
Yeah, thank you, Derrick. Thank you to mention Special Olympics, but also the Paralympic Committee and all this sport for persons with disability committee that can be a good set for a network like the GUDIN. And I'm sure that most of the universities now are connected in one way or another with this disabled sport organizations. Is there any other comment or maybe from people abroad? Don't hesitate to mention your network in your countries. Erica?
Yes, there is a question from Sierra Leone. It's not really about networks, but I will tell you anyway. From Dr. Aisha Fofana Ibrahim. My university has just started introducing disability issues at the university. What resources are available to help us engage effectively with students with disability? We really want to get this right.
Okay, so it's good to have Sierra Leone on board. And it's very broad questions. I don't know who wants to jump on it to help the person or someone who wants, please. Did you answer the question?
I'm sorry not to answer a question. I was just going to add another comment and an example. It's not a network per se yet. I'm from Canada, Queen's University, and we have a partnership with the University of Gondar in Ethiopia, and it's supported by the MasterCard Foundation, and it's looking to support access to inclusive education for individuals with disabilities in Gondar, to the University of Gondar, also build capacity for their faculty and develop research partnerships. And we're actually going to be also developing a program to support capacity building of training people to support people with disabilities in Ethiopia as well.
So that is one of the answers to make partnership with another university very active that can support you in Sierra Leone to develop your capacity. And of course, the GUDIN will be there for that to help you to make some connection. Please, sir.
Okay, thank you. My name is Benoît. I'm from Université Assane Seck of Ziguinchor, Senegal. And I'm very happy to be here with you to attend this meeting. So I wanted to know if in Western Africa, there is something like this to discuss sometimes, because sometimes it is very difficult to attend because of many things. So is there something existing in West Africa or in Africa? Thank you.
Thank you. There is another question I find very interesting from Cyrine Boujagila, sorry, from Tunisia, I think. As we're talking about business schools, what about architecture ones? Is there any special network concerning them, please, especially in developing countries?
Comment there as well.
Okay, now that many questions around networking, and I think that's the role, the dream of the GUDIN is to put people all together, to try slowly to accept everybody and to have a completely accessible network where everybody can go and ask questions and find partners and find solutions. So of course we want the Ziguinchor University and all university from Tunisia to be part of it and to use this network to find some allies and technical resources for all the questions they have. So we are in connection, for example, with Dakar University also. I'm sure this network can create local network of universities that wants to become more inclusive. So the GUDIN has a wish to become global, but of course it has to build on the national and local network. And if it's not there, we're happy to support if we have the capacity. For example, we are present in Ziguinchor for many years. My colleague there, Tomasello, knows very well that we started in 1999 some projects over there, and we are still there in Ziguinchor. Support the university.
Hervé, behind you, Karine has something.
Karine, please.
I'd like to answer to the question relayed by Erica, the first question, on how do we start and how do we make it right. I was facing the same problem. Me as a speaker, individual speaker, and as a person representing the CGE, this Conférence des Ecoles, CGE, I would say, first of all, we rely a lot on associations. That's how we do it. Because we don't all necessarily
necessarily have the experience about disability. It depends on each individual's experience, personal experience. Associations know how to do it. We rely a lot on student associations and also on general associations which specialize in disability. We ask them to come to our schools to organize some activities in order to raise awareness about disability. That's the first step, because you will face lots of barriers, especially from people, because not everybody is sensitive to the matter. And first, you have to try and raise awareness. And secondly, what we do is that then we train the professors who have expressed an interest in disability and how can they make their students' life better and students' learning better. That's how we do it, little by little, step by step. It also depends on the legislation of your country, of course, because each country is different. Each country's approach and views on disability is different. So rely on your local associations. Of course, as I always say, Google is your best friend. Type in disability awareness or disability officer, counselor. I watch a lot of webinars, since I can't go everywhere, a lot of webinars from Canada, Quebec, they're really good, UK, everyone, because you can benefit from everybody, which is why we need a network, so that we can exchange best practices, I think.
I just wanted to add to what you said, because I think it's really important to have this GUDIN network start, because we can then begin to share, we can be a format to share some of those best practices. So countries who are looking at establishing some kind of services at their higher ed institutions can look at other countries who've already done that. Like in the United States, we have AHEAD, and AHEAD has done a lot to provide guidance and best practices to higher ed institutions. And the other thing I was going to say is a lot of our conferences internationally have been live streamed. I know the Zero Project live streams all of the great innovations that are going out there. So if we can just be a network to let each other know that these things are happening and going on, then that helps to just inform.
I think Derrick has a comment.
Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to say the question about architecture schools as they related to business schools. So I'm on the board of something called the Global Universal Design Commission, the GUDC, led by Peter Blanc from Syracuse University. And the GUDC brings together professionals who are focused on architecture, urban planning, these kinds of professionals, both academics and practitioners. A number of architectural firms are involved as well. And I put a link in the chat box there, but that is one example of where universal design principles and practices as they relate to architecture certainly have a global network to support them.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very good news about this global universal design network. Very useful when we are thinking about new buildings, about new constructions. Universal design should be a reference. Jonathan?
Thank you, Hervé. First of all, Derrick, I've got to talk to you as soon as I come back to the States.
I look forward to that.
We're building a new building at Drake, and it's universal design, and I think I'd like to show it to you and get some of your thoughts on that, maybe. Hmm?
Sure, be my pleasure.
Probably when I get back. But my question has more to do with a little bit of a fear I have and a hope. Let me explain it this way. One of the biggest obstacles to passing the Americans with Disabilities Act as a broad-based bill was breaking down the silos that we had before. Each disability group had their own little group, and it was hard to get them together. But we got over that. And the last 29 years, they've become more integrated. I think the same is true of the CRPD. Having said that, listening to you and others on the panels, I'm thinking as we grow this global university network, I think about it broadly speaking. I'm sure you do too, Hervé. We have a broad thing. However, a lot of universities have certain
specialties, special interests. I mean, look at St. Cloud State. The expertise they have developed in a narrow area of deafness in China, they have a lot of expertise. Other schools and universities have done things in deafness. Some universities have reached out to other countries for autistic students. So I'm wondering, as we build this global university out there, should we be thinking about looking at some of these universities as mentors to other universities? Yeah, they know how to do it. And maybe this university, maybe they already have a nascent, a beginning program in something like that, but they don't know how to do it. Well, there are other universities like Vienna and others that have done it, and they could be mentors to others. My fear is we start setting up silos. I don't want that to happen. So maybe it's a management problem in terms of managing this. But I see a lot of universities that could be mentors to other universities in other countries. And I don't mean just US, I mean universities in Europe, Africa, Asia, that could become mentors. And how we set that up in a broad-based program like you have envisioned with HI, maybe something to think about, using that expertise that these universities, some have already developed.
Very good point. That's arguments for the discussion we'll have just after the break. What do we want to do with this network and how do we want this network to function? It's up to you. Again, HI role is to facilitate the launch, the beginning. Until we have to completely invent and create the rules, and mentorship could be a very good rule for the future members of the GUDIN. Why not? Derrick.
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to add to what the senator was saying. The experience of Bangladesh here. We had a message from the University of Chittagong saying that they have inaugurated the first accessible e-learning center in Bangladesh, funded and supported by the Aga Khan Foundation. So I think that could be a good practice that could be used as a mentoring experience to other universities about that topic, for example.
Yeah, very good point. Do you have other good points like that in your comments? Good news like that?
I will read them.
Okay. Any other maybe connection that you have with developing countries, or maybe at European level, or outside Europe, America, Latin America, you could use to facilitate connection with a maximum of people? No? Anybody wants to? Yes, please.
I am the president of Beacon College, and we have a unique mission. We're the first accredited institution in the United States, liberal arts-based baccalaureate, exclusively for students with learning and attention issues, including autistic spectrum disorder. First, I have an answer to the gentleman from Senegal who called. There is a group in Lagos, Nigeria. The contact person is Mr. Dare Daniels. I don't have the information on his group. They organized and ran the first international conference on people with disabilities for sub-Saharan Africa. That was 2 or 3 years ago I attended. And they are actively involved in trying to create networks, particularly focused on the transition to higher education for individuals with disabilities. We at Beacon have a distinct model that we use with I would say, a great deal of success with this population of students that we serve. And we have been asked to visit other countries to begin to work with them, collaborate with them, and to learn from them, because we have a lot to learn from the cultural differences that we have between the United States and other countries. But one program that we are particularly proud of is a collaboration with Sharjah and the Sharjah Center for Learning Difficulties. And that is under the Center for Humanitarian Services run by Sheikha Jamila Al-Qasimi. And we are, right now, I leave tomorrow to award certificates to students who have gone through a pre-college program, students who may have thought that they could do college work. And hopefully as a result of this, they recognize that they do have talents and skills and yes, knowledge that will be useful to them as they work through the challenges that they do have. And what we're all trying to accomplish here is to ensure that the island of challenge that any disabled student has do not become and do not define the landscape of their life. And I think that's a very important feature of what we try to do.
Thank you very much. So if we don't have any more comments, I just look around. Mr. Ceremony, you see, I just perfectly on time. I think we plan to have a break now in order to also have, now you try to know each other, you identify maybe some colleagues you want to talk to. So we have a breakout session just here at the same floor, and we'll be back in 30 minutes here now to work on what we want to do with this network, what would be the rules, what was the expectation of people. We raised some survey, and we have the result of the survey to share with you, and hopefully we will officially launch and with some signature at the end of the day. Thank you.
In my was a roundtable on time, so I congratulate all of you.